Trust is the building block of soul. I was given this title this morning while I was thinking about what is it that is hindering many of us in our expressions of who we are as souls, or just as we are in this vision of, I love who I am. Why can't you see me the way that I do? Right? This is where many are saying, we take off the gloves, we put away the mask, and we walk the walk of INFJ, right? This is where I often found myself getting my strength, my dignity, and my wisdom in who I was from a personality type. Okay, that's a level of understanding of who we are here that many would say is limited in its expression. It's beautiful for those who feel the need to fly free from anything and everything that they've ever planted in their minds on this plane, correct? We have so many souls who say that there are other things that are limiting their expression, and it could be that it's because it's determined to be valueless in this society, right? Suicidal conventions are acknowledged in Brenda's life, and yet others were saying we can't talk about it as much in the vision of, I was of love of someone who did that vision. Therefore, the portrayal of trauma was very much a part of my beginnings of trauma, right? It's more of the release of the trauma that I worked on for a long time, planting the seeds of love for souls who have done that vision in this world and then came through on the screen. We understand that notion of what Kurt Cobain was able to achieve in his mindset on that level of love of life, right? Or the lack of it is what many are talking about. So what happens when we go through this process of soul building? Because that's the nature of what it is. We align with those who can understand who we are in some way, shape, or form most often. Or we have a uniting principle that we are operating under. That's where most are going. I operate under the nation of liberty is where many in this country are. They think about the liberty of who they are, and yet they try to hinder those who are trying to freely express their own wisdom in whatever ways they can. Whether or not it is perceived as such is an external vision of validation that many are looking for. You see, once you go to the internal value system of Brenda, you would see that she has forgiven and forgotten many of those souls that she portrayed herself as hurt by at one point in time. It's when the pattern of abuse or neglect is brought through for her. Okay, she has been accused of those sorts of visions in various ways because, in essence, she has been told by a certain soul, when we project that vision on another, it's an aspect of who we are. That's that obscure understanding of who we are as souls. Okay, but when you go to the vision of, I'm embodying more aspects of who I am here on this plane, then you know it's the real deal. Because you feel like you fit with that vision. You don't feel like I'm supposed to be somebody else's vision in order to be beloved. This is what many are looking to highlight them in a way that they themselves cannot necessarily do for themselves. That's one of the regions of the brain that many are operating out of, is that I'm not seeing the beauty of who I am in the reflections of others' faces. So I go within and I build up my walls, is where many are. Brenda has built up some walls of protection from certain souls, in essence, due to the nature of her vibration and her frequency band vision. I don't vibrate with them. I honor them as souls. It doesn't mean that they don't dishonor me in their minds. Okay? That's a very different kind of value system to operate under. When she has her moments of victimhood, she knows how to unwind it. It's not a pleasant process for many, right? She knows how to be kind when she unwinds, but if you continue to poke at her, she will release the dragon, is what many say. Basically, that's the phoenix rebirthing itself. She did that several times for many people to see it, understand it, and wisely say, that one is not for me. If I'm going to have to sit there and be rebirthed in this destruction of fire, right? She went through her own phase of it. But in all reality, it was a process of understanding the nature of trusting herself first and foremost. She's built the trust up with many of her cohorts in the field of soul. She understands the nature of trusting our friends and family in various degrees, depending on what they are indeed showing or believing in her. If she hears something negative about her wisdom, she knows there's something else going on, guaranteed. Because in essence, if you are not hearing the loving and adoring thoughts that you think you need to hear, somehow it gets labeled as less than. And what we're doing is we're showing you different levels of guidance and wisdom that she can vibrate in. Her friends know it very well. I'm very accepting of many people for who they are. I just don't acknowledge them as the best of the best for me. Okay? So this is why Brenda is very much, I have levels of friendships or acquaintances that I deal with. And when I do that vision, I do it well. I know how to operate on so many levels of understanding with people. I can go into a jail cell, sit with someone, have compassion for them, right? I haven't done it, but I've honored that vision of a prisoner for life is one of my family members from a distant relative's perspective. And my compassion and understanding for those who've made those mistakes and who are never given another chance often want to see the beauty of the peace of mind that they found in that place of wisdom, even though it was a destroyed version of who she was. She herself doesn't honor the vision of, I was a victim of that soul. What I am saying is that people who are trustworthy in her mind are the first place that she's going to go to. And why would we say or think that it would be any different? So when people come to her with visions of distrust on their minds, she is very wary of those souls. She doesn't open her heart to them about who she is. She has her own moments of glory and dishonor in that idea of, I've done some of those visions myself, from different planes of understanding. So this is why when you go through the process, you aim for your highest vision of who you are, not the lower level understandings of what we are on this plane. But what Brenda has done is shown that her natural abilities are enhancing in the vision of INFJ mindset, right? The cognitive abilities I have to meditate on demand are what allow me to relax my brain enough that I can then go into a light state of trance for no reason at all. That's where some would say, whoa, it could be that it's my mind taking a break from the processing of everyone else's bullshit. That's where some of us go. It's a word that people aren't going to like, but that's not her vision. It was a vision that was passed on to her from another family member because that's their perspective of what it was that she was doing. She was passing along that kind of information from this level, and yet we wonder why people like Brenda say, stand back and watch me redeem myself in that vision of what that was. It was supposed to just be crap. But then there was another vision that came in to try to dissuade her from letting go of the condescension, opening up to the highest levels of wisdom. This is where those words of wisdom come through. You're going to see it. It's a shifting of the vibration, right? Depending on who she's actually working with. How many people want to know what that is? Does she take on the characteristics of those that she is working with? It can be a problem for some of us. We know how to manipulate the masses is what many of those INFJs in the know are working with. We know how to do our beauty. What we have to be in alignment with is who are we honoring in our moments of it. Now, if you were Brenda, you would understand that the manipulation has nothing to do with a strategic discovery of who we are as much it is I'm going to help you by shifting your thinking potentially, or giving you alternative perspectives to peruse in your off time to see if those might make more sense. Okay, these are the natural therapists of the world. So if you think that your therapist isn't there utilizing tools of comfort, wisdom, and slight mindset shifting, that's the normal vision that Brenda and her cohorts of soul often are utilizing. They're utilizing their minds to manipulate the masses in many ways, as many are. It's not just those INFJs. We bring our hearts to the process most often, unless we're being belittled incessantly, which some of us are by others. Okay? But to be honest, that's where the trusting became a problem for some people, thinking, oh, this is just her own ego vision, versus the idea of, I have now tapped into the nature of the love of all. And my soul aligns me with those who honor me. And sometimes those souls have dishonor in their mindsets on this plane. So that's why you can align with those who aim high and get those highest levels of love and wisdom and guidance. So if those are the souls that you want to align with, stay tuned. See, I got told there was going to be a fly here. I didn't pay attention. So, there are people who honor the vision of what trust as a building block is. It means it's not always granted for money. They are suspicious always of people's motives, depending on their experiences of themselves or from the past. So if you yourself are very strategic in your operating procedures in life, you might be a little bit more suspicious of others. Brenda usually is of the, I give people the benefit of the doubt until they prove me wrong. And that is when I get my heart hurt sometimes by others who have not seen the amount of wisdom that I have brought through in previous sessions. Okay? So that's where this idea of, no trust. Okay? So if someone is aware of you, that's one thing. Do they like you? That could be it too. What level of trust comes in is a whole different process for many people. And this is why for her, it was known from the get-go that my soul is on my side. My soul dishonors me is where some go, because in essence they're working with soul vision with other souls rather than their own soul as an honoring of the work that she's done. You're just going to have to fly with it, okay? The miracles of the moment are when people align with the nature of, I love you, set me free from your vision. Brenda says, thank you for telling me, actually. She knows those who don't honor her. She will pick it up in a heartbeat. But she honors the vision of it. I wouldn't want you to think you have to be exactly like me. I don't want you to feel like you need to be who I am. This is not what I do. I bring you your own vision from the highest plane that is available to me. Now, if you don't like the idea of love of all and getting those highest levels of wisdom, right? Most people just want to know what's going to be happening in the next week for them. Potentially next month, next year, right? Not next century, but that's where Brenda went. Okay, she's on the family tree vision and she knows where her family aligns. It's a beautiful vision of discovery. But it's not about saying what that really is, because it's not going to be relevant for anyone else other than me and my children and my grandchildren, okay? Now, for those of you who say that's a wild and woolly vision, it means that it is of affecting of many people whose expansive visions of we are bringing our futures to us in certain ways. These are general understandings of who wants to come in as family tree members of past, present, and future. Okay? These are those soul setups that she brings through, right? It's the paths of discovery that are most probable for us. When you go to soul vision, it's almost like it's granted to you. Okay, these are those souls that will align with you. These are those souls that are going to love you for who you are, whether or not you reveal all as well. Brenda doesn't reveal all of her sources of wisdom. Do you know how many sources of wisdom she caretakes in her mind, though? Probably about 3 or 4. But there's probably about 10 or 12 that she's utilized consistently over the years. INFJ is probably one of the strongest ones she will ever go to, because it is a cognitive ability that has no dictates about how someone is to be or to act. It's more like these are preferences you might have in your abilities to do various things, and it's an expansive vision already in the portrayal of it's not just made up in my mind. I have proof by cognitive scanning. Okay, so there's a biological component to it at this point, is what is being shown to us in the near future. It's spiraling up in it as she talks, because those souls who know her know she doesn't mess around with people's biological systems. That's the nature of our healing abilities, right? That's just a part of the body that I created. But if I create from the victimhood of it, then I have to build the trust back up. And that's what I'm doing. It's the trust in our bodies. It's the trust in our minds to be kind to us, right? How many of us beat ourselves up, or we can't get out of a thought pattern, right? That's where Brenda was. I can't get out of that thought pattern. I can't get out of that thought pattern. People who know her know what that means. I go play or do something because most of the time it's already been processed enough. The answer is there. I'm just not accepting it as yet. And when I say I'm not accepting it, I've accepted it in the mind, but it hasn't completely filtered through my whole system. And so I'm just spinning in it. Okay, so we're talking about the beauty of when you embody your soul and you process the vision that my soul is on board with me. I am aligned with those highest visions of who I am. If you think that the love of all is not the highest, then by golly, go even further. That's where most people are starting to experiment with the nature of war from various levels of love. Okay? War is a disaster zone in many minds. And we trust ourselves to do the best job we can when we are confronted with that vision. That's where many are going. Others see it as an escape hatch from this plane. I'll create the wars that allow me to do the destruction that I cannot do on my own, and I will have others do it for me. It will allow me to escape from the prison of my mind that says that there is something wrong with me, and instead there are other things wrong with those, quote, other people on the other side of the aisle, on the other side of the world, whatnot. Okay? It could be even within the idea of my country is broken up into these bonded soul visions. Okay? Could be yet just another person, right? So it's not just groups. It could be an individual. It could be war within. This is where people are going to see that idea. So you have to trust that your own soul's vision is of the high, and you aim for it because it's there. Whether or not you want to admit it or not, it just means that you're being loved, adored, and caretaken by those visions that honor you, adore you, and cherish you. You have more than one. This is why we tell people don't discard your friends and family. Easy peasy, right? Brenda had to do one vision, not a year. How many people? There was like so many souls at some point where people say we let go of our high school buddies when we go off to college in many ways, right? This is what's coming up. Do we trust in the values of each other? This is why it's where people are aligning with those that they trust to agree with them most often. Okay? But when you go to soul, some of the aspects of who you are going to be disparaging of your wisdom in the idea that it's not for everybody, but it may be right for you. So don't count on certain souls being able to agree with you about their views of who you are. Now, if you can understand the phrase, I honor you for who you are, rather than I need you to be more like me, that's when you can hit a higher note of love. Okay? That's why people love this vision. Okay? Many are saying, I need you to be more like me in many ways. Okay? But when you come to your soul's vision of what love is and trusting in it, you don't get the scariness of it that many are experiencing. It doesn't mean it's a valueless vision that doesn't have any source of wisdom. It's beyond most people's understanding what that wisdom is, because we've been taught for so long to go outside of who we are, rather than, oh, I'm all that and more, and I have my soul with me on board right now. That's the nature of the strength. That's the nature of the wisdom. That's the nature of understanding. People's vision of hierarchical understanding is often what is getting in the way of their love of themselves and their own souls, because they're thinking someone else's soul is better than them or has a higher level of understanding than what they could ever reach here on this plane. And that's why people go, woo, really? What about God and all of his vision of all? That's a very caretaking heart for some. For others, they've been conditioned to think that it's a judgmental vision about who they are in every step along the way. So they hinder their expressions of love in order to please another, quote, soul vision most often. Most of those visions are of soul. Most of them had their hearts handed to them by Brenda, in essence, by saying, I understand you need to have that vision for you in order to feel beautiful for you. What we're doing here is we're honoring the vision of those who feel beautiful in that vision and those who don't need that vision to feel beautiful for who they are. It doesn't mean it's not there for others to caretake in their hearts and minds and souls, because it's the unity vision that Brenda often goes with. She's not here to do the vision of conditioning from certain books. She's here to do the unity vision, and it's more like unity consciousness of what's going on in the planet. Because in essence, it's not a disconnecting from those souls. It's actually an honoring of all, even those who don't abide by those words. Okay, because most have a preconceived idea of what that really means, or those who say we are all that expression in every way, shape, and form. But if you understood the nature of where we are heading, you might want to illuminate yourself to the idea that not all souls carry the same vibration within those books of old. And that's why Brenda doesn't vibrate in them much, because she knows what's going on behind the scenes within those books. Very much of love for many. Very much a love of some and most. Right? The many, the all, it's all good. It's all expressions of love. It's just that they honor the vision that they can create division in the books. And that's when Brenda says, that's not really where I'm at. So I'm trying for a higher vibrational vision that is loving of all, but doesn't separate us from each other in our minds or in our hearts. And the thing is even in those visions, we are all aligned and unified in our hearts. It's just our minds that are doing the dividing from another soul. Okay? Now, that does not mean everyone has to align with everybody in their minds. It means it's an understanding of how we create what we create in this plane of understanding. Brenda's of love of understanding. She loves to understand people. And what that means is she doesn't say she knows who you are, but she understands the nature of you being human, of being of soul. Most often others have different ideas about what they want to claim they are of. And then the vision of we all have those who are caretaking us from the other side of the veil, most often. There are very little souls who don't have an advocate on the other side of the veil that she works with. She has to hear from your advocates sometimes that are not the easiest, depending on where she herself resides, because she's a strong woman with a strong heart, but she has a mindset that can literally take people down in a heartbeat if it's needed. It's what she did with a certain soul at one point, and she had to feel the vibration of that coming back to her, and that was not a pleasant experience. And you want to talk to people who know what it is like to be in the grips of passion, of destruction. She knew it, that it was coming, and she still fought her way through it. I knew I was dealing with divorce from a soul level, and that's what I had to work through, was the rebuilding of the trust with a soul who is of the devil in the mind of a book, and who said, I lost it when I heard that. Do you know what it's like to hear those projections from souls who claim that that is an actuality in the vibration versus the reality of what was created, what that was created for? And that was basically so they could release the anger and frustration and tension and put it on an outside source of who they were, rather than going within and figuring out what the actual issue was that many were creating with. That's the nature of it. It's a purely physical manifestation, is what some would say, within the body. That's what people are talking about when they see those souls that are acting that way. It's a caretaking of the heart. It's basically a lower level understanding of who they were when those visions were brought to them, placed upon their hearts, and reinforced day in and day out. That's usually what those souls are being projected with. So this is why Brenda knows it as an accompaniment to certain souls' vision. And she says, well, that's going to get unwound pretty fast for the most part. And it's not needed. To be honest, most people now, we have enough resources in this world to understand what it is that's really going on, and our souls know how to align us with those who don't need that vision in order to be free from the guilt of what they've done. Others will use it as a guide of, this made me do it, rather than maybe I just have a pattern that I don't want to acknowledge about who I am and what other people think is right or wrong for me. And so it spirals in its vision of it. Now, when we talk about the trusting of who we are, we want people to trust in the nature of your soul is of the high if you're watching this vision. You're not vibrating in any lower level vision. You're enhancing your experience of who you are with every breath and beat of your heart. So I want to reinforce that for you always. There's no demeaning of who you are in any way by your own soul. So I want you to remember that when you're going out into this world. Place the blame on Brenda is where some souls would go, thinking that it was her fault that she did what she did with another soul that she had to caretake. Even those who portrayed her as the victim or the guilty one, right? Those are those dynamics she's had to work out on the soul level. So I want to say thank you for watching. And as always, as my soul has told me, like the fly was going to be driving me crazy, stay curious, wise, and soulful. Have a wonderful day.